Awesome. Welcome, Dave. Welcome to Motivated Masculine Men. I know we've talked many times. We've never met in person, but we have talked a lot over the years, from law enforcement stuff to burnout to I'm interested in what you're doing now. I know it's been probably about a year since we talked last, over a year. So it's gonna be good today. Anybody who's listening, watching, thank you very much. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and share this out. Get something from it, or know somebody that could get something from those conversations. We're all about just getting men to have open conversations, because that's how we help each other out and grow and connect further. So Dave, tell me what's going on in your life. What's going on at the moment? I know I've been seeing on Facebook you're traveling around all over the place. You got your book finally came out, which I know last time we talked you were working quite hard on. What's going on?
So life is good, man. I certainly no complaints. The truth is, we can always complain about something, just nobody really wants to hear about it. So why do it? Might as well tell the good stuff. But no, thank you for having me on. It has been a while since we have connected and chatted, and I'm really happy to be back with you in this format. I think it's fun, and I'm really excited for you and the evolution of your work too. Grateful for you always bringing the tough conversations to an easy platform. So I think it's a lot of fun. But yeah, life has been good. Gosh, what have we done since we last talked?
You were
Degree
going,
for
yeah,
10.
you were working on your master's degree last time we talked.
Yeah, so that's done. My thesis, everything done. That was finished a year ago this week actually. And my book's been out since September of 23, so almost 2 years now, which is kind of crazy. And it's doing really well. It's been the most proud I am of that. It ended up in the bookstore in 3 Ivy League universities, which is pretty cool.
Dude, that's
So
awesome.
super
Congrats.
excited. And yeah, we've done a couple book signings, just in random small bookshops. I haven't really done much of that, but it's been pretty successful. It's, found, not to plug it, but it's found on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I don't actually do too much advertisement with it. I find the gratuitous part really tough on me.
Yeah.
So speaking of masculinity issues, like I think there's some guys that are out there like, yeah, pound their chest, they did this, and they want everybody to know it.
Yeah.
I actually struggle with that self-promotion piece. So could I have sold 20,000 books? Maybe. I don't know, but I don't care because I think the right people that need to read my message are reading it. So that's
Yeah,
up to me.
I mean, and that's the thing, on that masculinity side, it is about being you, and that's why, I know you and I have had conversations before. This podcast used to be, fight the burnout. Then it was, with everybody. Then it was just, really first responders, and then kind of evolved mostly towards law enforcement. Now I'm opening it back up and rebranded the whole thing. And the reason for that is because I've learned more about myself. I don't want to just
Yeah.
hit the law enforcement side. I love them. And the whole reason, I don't know if you realized, I shut down everything to do with policing. Literally shut down
Yeah.
all my mental wellness stuff, all that stuff, because I found it was draining me too much. Just I would get so much in the weeds, and like you said, you don't want to get out there and be you don't want to get out there and promote and, pound your chest about the book. I got tired of trying to, drag feet to try and help those law enforcement agencies and people in that. And then I would get so involved with the different things and the shootings and I was just like, nah. And it's learning about yourself over the evolution. And
100%.
that's truly masculine, is knowing and continuously knowing yourself and growing. Dave,
That
before we jump,
self-awareness is huge.
yeah,
And even in my world of positive psychology, self-awareness is number one.
yeah,
Because if you don't know who you are and how you identify and what your purpose is, there's nothing you can do to support somebody else because you're not doing it from a place of value.
no,
You're
no,
doing it just from, standard talking points that may be, not relevant to you.
yeah.
And if you're not authentic, you're not doing anybody else any good.
And the key thing right there is you can change too. You don't
Yeah.
have to. And I see so many guys, especially that are out there, women as well, but we're talking about men here, that will think that they have to stay in that, keep doing what they're doing because,
Because they've
X,
always
Y, and
done it.
Z, because they've always done it. You
Yep.
see it. I mean,
Hate
we
that
see it.
phrase.
We see it a lot in law enforcement. Who am I if I don't have a badge and a gun?
Yeah.
It's like, and it actually kills people. They take their own lives. They die within 7 years of retiring. There's all these different statistics. And the thing is, though, is that you can evolve and change. And it's funny
100%.
going through the last couple of years and completely evolving and changing and closing it completely down. And you have that little brain in the back of your head that goes, "Oh, you should just go back to it." And it's like, no, 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 no.
That's actually an interesting conversation to touch on. The science geek in me can't help but bring this piece up
Do it.
is when you're looking at the concept of neuroplasticity, which
Mm.
is how the brain evolves and changes based on its current environment. And so we often look at the positive side to that. So I'm in a bad space now, and is it possible for me to get better? Well, the answer is yes. You just have to do the work, put yourself into use the interventions that are out there, and over time, that will fix. I don't know if it will fix you, but you'll do better, and you'll be in a greater place, and your well-being will be better off for it. There is the opposite side to that too, where when you are in a bad space, we'll use law enforcement as the example, is you see 20, 30 years, whatever your career is, of all this bad crap, your brain normalizes that through the same science of neuroplasticity. And instead of ending up in a good place because you're doing good work, you end up in this really bad place because you're doing bad work to your brain. And that's the same thing that you were just talking about. These things that were not serving you anymore, not serving your purpose and your well-being, you got to get rid of them. We pack our bags with all of these things, all these experiences that we pick up along the way. And when we get to the point where the bags get really heavy, we either need to ditch the bag and move on, which is very difficult to do because
So hard.
it's not authentic. You got to keep that bag with you. You earned it, good or
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
But what we can do is we can reevaluate what's in that bag. And
Yeah.
then we can take some of the heavier stuff out that's no longer serving us. And it gives us more value to the things that are left.
Yeah.
And so your point is spot on, and your evolution of your journey is perfect example of what we should and how we should be doing it. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, for putting it in it's simple and good terms. I know you've done the same exact thing. I've watched you, I've seen you evolve. But it was during COVID we met on Power of Our Story, and it was just we hit it off. I'm gonna hold you on coming to the East Coast though, and come stay with you. So I'm
Casa
waiting.
Casa, brother. College in an empty bedroom now, so it's yours when you need.
Perfect, man. I'm gonna take you up on that. Same thing over here. You come over here. I got spare room. It's all yours.
So close to you just a few
I
weeks ago,
know. I
too.
know you were.
And
I
I was like,
saw that.
oh,
I
I
was like,
just can't get down
I
to
was
New
like,
Zealand.
dude, what's going on? You were over in Australia, weren't you?
I was in
Just over,
Brisbane, yeah.
yeah, over
So
literally a
close.
3.5 hour flight, 4 hour flight. I'm like,
Yeah,
dude, so
I honestly
close.
just didn't have the time to do anything other than the conference I was there for. Man, I was like biting at
Nah,
the.
we'll make it work. We will make it
Yeah,
work. One day we will, and we'll have that
that, that's
and
far. You are really
oh,
far from me. Oh
from
my
you.
God.
Yeah, it's
Holy
perspective.
cow.
I'm in New Zealand. Dave's on the East Coast in New
New
Jersey.
Jersey.
You
Yeah.
can't get unless you go to the UK, you can't get much like yeah, it's
No.
it's a long ways.
Yeah, it was 6 hours to LA
Yep.
and then I think 17 to Brisbane.
Yeah, that's about right. 16, 17 to Brisbane. So from LA, it's 12 to 13 to us here in Auckland.
It was
Yeah.
terrible.
The other thing that you can do.
A lot of time in his tin tube.
Yep, and the other way that you can do it is you can do for Auckland if you want to come straight to Auckland is you do New Jersey to Houston and then you'll do a 14 to 16 hour flight to Auckland.
Hmm.
From Houston, yeah, same
Brutal.
difference.
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
it is pretty brutal once you travel as much as I do because there's only one way to get off this rock in the middle of the South Pacific. You kind of start to learn tricks and you actually start to enjoy those kind of 14, 16 hour flights more than those 4 to 5 hour flights. But what I was gonna say is I know Dave, you've gone through a journey. I'd love to hear, or I've heard a lot of the journey and kind of spec'd up on it. But for listeners that haven't, and obviously, if you scroll back in this podcast, you will find a couple interviews that Dave and I have done. As one way back in the beginning that kind of, and you'll see the evolution. But Dave, tell us a little bit about your evolution from childhood through law enforcement to kind of where you are now, because I'd love to revisit it if you're willing to and hear it
yeah,
again.
absolutely.
And I know from a different lens that you're in now versus, when we've talked about it in the past.
Yeah, my journey has kind of really spanned such a vast variety of experiences. I highlight much of this in my book. So if this interests you, it's
Plug it,
1995,
man. Send it out
1975.
there.
Yeah, so, just kidding. The
Tell
lack of
people,
humility that I just spoke about.
yeah, tell
The
everybody about it because it's a resilient life. I can see it behind you.
So my journey actually started before I was born. My journey started with my grandparents who left Germany, German Jews that were exiled from Germany just after Kristallnacht in 1935, when the Nazi Party decided to destroy all of the German businesses and homes. And Kristallnacht, for those that are not German savvy, translates into English as the night of crystal. So essentially, the breaking of the glass of all of these storefronts and these homes. So that happened, and my grandparents are like, "Dang, we have to get out of here right now." And they were scheduled on the USS Washington, which was supposed to leave out of, I think, Bonn in the north of Germany to then come to the United States in about 3 or 4 weeks. But they had learned that their ship was only going to make its last stop in Le Havre, France. It was never going to make it to Germany because of the progression of the war. So they found their way to Le Havre, France, and were literally the last ones on that boat before it embarked back to the United States and never came to Germany. So that's actually how my story starts, is because my grandparents had to find their own resilience and their own way to leave tyranny to be able to come to a place that was safe for them where they could thrive in their own lives. And I was raised under that umbrella. We think about the Holocaust, we think of World War II. It just seems like, history book stuff that our kids are now learning in high school history class, US history. But the reality is that was my grandparents. It's not that far
It's
back.
not that long ago.
It's not that long ago. And so I was raised under that umbrella. I was overprotected. I was minimized as to what my capabilities could be because my even my mom tried to keep me really close to the chest because of the fear of what can happen to me as this Jewish boy out in the world. So that's how it starts. So I was raised under that lens, struggled a lot through relationship building, especially at a young age, because I just didn't have the wherewithal and the teachings and the modeling to be able to do it better. Sadly, I was also sexually abused as a young child by a friend of my grandparents, which was never really resolved. And
Mm.
then I didn't do well in school through most of my school career. My parents were divorced when I was 13, so I was dealing with all of these different things. I graduated high school because they wanted me out with a 1.8 GPA. But I did get into college, and I went to Hofstra University in a program called the New School. It was modeled after the New School in England, and they had a program in that construct called the Division of Special Studies. And essentially, it was a program for underperforming kids that showed potential. So if you've ever seen that, was it a guy who went, "You have potential, you have potential."
Yeah.
Like it's something out of Oprah. But they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and I was able to get a college education, which was amazing. I always called it the retard program, which I know is not correct to say anymore, but it is what it is.
It is what it
Uh,
is, and that's what we used to say back
yeah,
then, even.
yeah. So whoever's offended by that, sorry.
Yeah, you
Um,
can if you're offended by that, you can turn this off because you'll probably get offended
yeah,
again.
it's only gonna get worse.
It's only gonna get
Downhill.
worse.
So yeah, I graduated college with a not much better GPA than I graduated high school with. It was a 2.8 instead of a 1.8. And then I
Hey, at
went
least
right
you went
into
up a point.
Hey, listen, progress, right? You got to
Progress.
celebrate it. Got to celebrate it. And then I went into law enforcement. When I graduated, I had an internship with the New York City Medical Examiner's Office for a year,
Hmm.
which was, by the way, the best education I ever had.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. What I saw in 1 year, 100 people don't see in a lifetime.
Well,
And
that's also law enforcement, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, for sure. But this was something special, from mob hits that floated up with their cement shoes on. Um, to, we call crispy critters at the bottom of an elevator shaft where they would throw a body down there and light it on fire to get rid of it. And I mean, you name it, I've seen it. We have plane crashes. Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Then you also have the person that has spent their entire life alone in what they call in New York City an SRO, a single room occupancy apartment.
Yeah.
And essentially, it's like a college dorm with a common bathroom in the hallway. People that don't, they're rent controlled, so it's maybe $200-300 a month, which in New York City you can't even get a parking spot for that. They have these old people that don't have any relationships dying alone in these places, and you don't know it until starts coming through the vent weeks and months later.
Especially,
And
and then it hits summer.
oh, yeah, it's
See,
something special.
we told you it'd go downhill quickly.
And you need a whole container of Vicks just to get through the one investigation.
That was my very first experience with death in law enforcement was middle of summer, 3 weeks. Yeah, he
Oof.
died alone in his sleep. Yeah.
The worst one with that was in the middle of summer, died alone, and literally melted into the carpet. They were on a carpet
Oh, so they're
and they
gone
were
pat the bloated stage.
past the bloated stage. They were face down. So we didn't know what we were rolling over at that point because it just looked like a clothed body face down on the carpet. It smelled horrible. We knew they were there for an extended period of time. No one had heard from that person in a couple months.
Yeah.
Um, so when we went to go roll the person over, by the way, you heard the
Oh.
stuff just peeling off the carpet. It was like, wow. But there was nothing
See, dark conversations we're
there,
on.
buddy. 14 minutes into this and it's already, but yeah, there was nothing. Oh, it was horrible. There's literally nothing there, but just bone and soup.
Yeah, fun,
Anyway, yeah.
better as a slogan used to be here in New Zealand for recruiting, better work stories.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I went through. That was an incredible learning experience, and then I became a police officer in December 8th of 1999. And I had a couple great calls in that first year and a half. Lost my gun on one, and fights in another, and whatever. But everything all ends well.
You're still with us.
I'm still, but my first real holy shit moment was 9/11. And
We've talked
so
about
my
this.
partner and I had, gone there together representing, unfortunately, not our agency because they told us it's not our city, not our problem. But we're 45 minutes out of New York City, so it's our problem.
Yeah.
So my partner and I went up there and I regrouped with people from the medical examiner's office that I had worked with a couple years before. And they had assigned us to a certain area to help rummage through. And I won't even repeat the things that I saw, felt, smelt,
Worse than
encountered.
when you're in medical examiner's office.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of those things I just don't enjoy going back to.
Perfect.
Um,
Let's not that.
and I also, from a perspective of respect
Mm.
of the circumstances, I don't think it's fair to truly highlight the details. People have written books about it. If you're that interested, read the books, but you're not going to hear it from me. So I still smell those smells. I still hear some of those sounds, and just revisiting it isn't.
Nah. First off, I'm gonna say thanks for going out of your way and doing the I'm gonna call it the manly thing and just going and going, sweet, we've got to go do this because of you, I know a lot of lives were saved and a lot of stuff was done that day that yeah, that's very powerful and very I just want to say thanks, man.
I appreciate that. And as difficult as that was and still is to talk about, I'm honored to have been there. I know that can sound weird, but it truly was an honor to be able to serve in the capacity that we did to try to give some sense of meaning to what happened there. So I'm grateful for having had the opportunity, and I wouldn't trade that for anything as much as it still bothers me today. And for those that are interested in looking a little bit deeper into that and are interested in me, I don't understand why, but if you are, um, every September 11th, I do post my pictures on
Yeah.
my social media. They are respectful. They are not something that's going to gross you out, but it gives you a perspective of what that day looked like.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way of beating around the bush on it. It was a difficult day for the whole world, let
Yeah.
alone if you're at ground zero. I mean, I've interviewed a few handful of people that have been there, that were there on that day and it is, let's hope it never happens again. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. There's nothing that can, in my mind, I don't think Hollywood could come up with a scenario that was worse.
No, I mean, we have different things going on in the world at the moment that are,
Pretty
that
bad.
probably pretty bad. That
Yeah.
will probably be up there with it or beyond
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, for on that ground where it was literally directed straight at civilians, it's a pretty dark
Yeah.
one. Okay, moving
Moving
on,
on.
moving on.
Brighter, bigger, better, brighter. So 20-year career in law enforcement, lots of cool stuff, lots of shitty stuff, lots of stuff that I still live with today, the good and the bad.
I mean, and
So
I just want to touch on that good and the bad, as I know from your learnings, your trainings, your the things that you even talk about to this day. You can't have the good without the bad. And
100%.
law enforcement, we have and again, I don't want the podcast to be all about law enforcement, but at the same time, law enforcement is one of those areas it's so extreme that the normal man you can use some of the tools and things that we've learned from that because it's so extreme. You can use it and you don't have to get to the extreme. But without the bad, there is no good. And without the good, there is no bad. So if
Yeah,
we
the
want to
one is
have the
not
good,
exclusive of the other.
exactly. You cannot have good without bad. You cannot have bad without good. And so the more good that we have, yes, you want to limit as much bad, but at the same time, you can always have, there's always good in every situation. For example, you and I, because we went through PTSD and all the traumatic crap and had our brains messed with within our skull. We're friends now, yet we've
Yeah,
never met.
absolutely. Both the good and the bad, I think you can treat them the same in this conversation.
Yeah.
Is it's not healthy to react to things, but
No.
rather to respond to them. Uh, we've responded to some of the adversities by building relationships in really cool places and unforeseen ones, like you and I, but not for our individual things that we sought a similar path to resolve. Our paths would have never crossed. And gosh, I can't imagine my life not having crossed your path or so many others that we both share those crossings with. And I just think it's really important to recognize that, yeah, like you said, the good and the bad are not exclusive. And one of the things that, when it comes down to the emotional side of the good and bad, that I like to discuss is joy and heart pain or emotional pain can't really live in the same place at the same time. So you can feel that negative emotion, but you're not feeling joy at that moment. However, you can convert that into joy through a process. And the more we can look at and reframe those negative experiences into positive emotion, the less negative emotion we're going to experience because the two can't coexist. When we talk about positive psychology, which I know we'll get to in a bit, looking at things through the lens of optimism doesn't mean there's a toxic positivity going on here, just like toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
They're both really bad, and we can compare those two. But the bad does exist. It's how you deal with it
No.
and how you reframe it that puts you in a place that it's okay.
It's all about that. I mean, a lot of it's about that language, that focus, and it's, how you react to all of it. It's,
Well, I would even correct, I don't want to say correct you, but I would
okay.
differ from you and say it's not about how you react, it's about how you respond. I
Sorry.
think the two
Yes. That's a
are very
much
different.
better word. Yes. I would agree with you.
And
Yes.
reaction can be mostly instinctual,
Yeah.
which often is not great. Responding is more thoughtful and, for whatever it's worth, more academic. It's more of an exercise. And
But you are right there, and I will retract my react to change to respond. Because you are totally right there. That was just the word that came off my mouth. But that's where my
you
brain was going.
reacted to
I reacted to it instead of responding. There you go. We did do that. Dave, tell us, again, going through your story, just so that we can kind of, close the circle, and then we can start talking about masculinity, positive thinking, all these different things that I want to hear more about because I know you've done so much study on, and I'm a geek when it comes to these things. From law enforcement, how'd you get into doing your master's and thesis, and what exactly was that master's and thesis on, so that everybody knows?
So when I was coming to the end of my rope in my career in law enforcement, I was losing myself a bit, and I was struggling with my own mental health and challenges. Went through some suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and I needed to find a way to rebrand and refocus myself because, like you said up in the beginning, we lose ourselves in the badge and the uniform, and we lose our identity of who we are. Who is Dave Berez? And I didn't know
So
that.
who is he, real quick?
Yeah. Well, who am I? I'm a person that will serve the community, anybody in any way possible I can. My purpose is to serve others. And I know that can sound a little self-indulgent. It can sound, you know, maybe unrealistic, but truly that's what makes me happy is when I can make other people happy or successful.
How do you serve yourself?
So that's a great question. And I think there's a little bit of a double-edged sword there because serving myself is by watching others succeed. And I feel that the rising tide does lift all of us at the same time. And by the strength and the lifting of others, I feel good about myself and my ability to serve other people.
Perfect.
So my service to others is my service to myself, but on a smaller, less academic scale, I enjoy being outside. I enjoy cycling. I enjoy weightlifting, and time with my kids and my wife are
And
always
if you
very
don't
important.
follow Dave, you see every year you do multiple different cycle things, giving again with an aspect of giving back. You do all these, and so I can totally get it. And I wouldn't. I mean, my background with coaching and all these. I think how you described who you are is perfect because, like you know yourself now. You've gone through that journey. Yeah, it's awesome to hear.
It's challenging because then you do have moments of like, dang, how is this serving me? I just gave this person this great advice. They're just rocket shipped up in life, and I'm still sitting here. Like, did that actually serve me? But when I take a step back, the truth is, yeah, because my purpose is to make sure that people around me are doing better. And I think when we all do better individually, we all do better collectively. And
Yeah.
that includes me. So I make sure I associate myself with people that are doing better than me. So they help pull me up too, not selfishly or not because I'm lazy, but science actually shows
Mm.
that if you're around five people that are doing good things, that are doing things better than you for a period of 30 days or more, you are more likely to do better things yourself.
You become the
And
average of the 5 to 7 people you hang around with the most.
correct.
So be very specific on who you hang around the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same thing goes the other direction too.
Yeah.
If you're hanging around with shitty people, it's going to bring you down.
Well, we
And I
see it
would,
especially like I remember when I was a teenager. My mom would always be like, "Oh, no, you can't hang out with a person." I'd be like, "No, I like hanging out with them." I can now see why because they were that people that were dragging me down away from my potential, and I was hanging around with them all the time. When I was hanging around the people that were building me up, I wasn't getting in trouble. You see it all the time.
and from an office context, like if you're coaching
Mm.
executives or even non-executives, anybody in an office or a working environment, I use the water cooler example.
Mm.
So, and for law enforcement, I always use the 3 o'clock in the morning example because that's when the really crappy conversations happen. And if you're at the water cooler at 3 o'clock in the morning and you start saying F this one, F that one, the Chief's a dick, and I can't believe I got it, literally is a vortex that sucks everybody down. Everybody's emotions go into the pit. It's that just that overflowing of negative emotion. But the same thing, it's just as contagious in reverse. If you walk up to that water cooler at 3 o'clock in the morning with a smile on your face, which by the way is very difficult to do,
Especially when
and you
it's like your
say,
sixth or seventh one in a row.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, yo, Chris, man, I couldn't believe I'm so exhausted, but my kid had the best baseball game yesterday. It's why I didn't sleep during the day yesterday. And you should have seen this catch he made that he was on fire. And then you're going to tell me a story about something positive that happened in your day yesterday. The person that, and the cycle goes up instead of the cycle goes down. Barbara Fredrickson talks about that with the broaden and build theory with the two spirals. It's your choice. You have that choice. You can either spiral up or you can spiral down. But when you are spiraling down, what's super important, because it happens to all of us, is you got to catch yourself. We got to catch the moment. Cross back over so you can go start spiraling back up again. What are you going to do to raise those positive emotions? Be the change that you want to see.
I want to come back to that in a second because I think there's a huge correlation and connection between, with the masculinity side of things. But I want to give you the chance to finish off on how you got to where
Ah,
you're at
sorry,
and the resilient. But
sidetracking here.
oh, again, I mean, this is the whole point of this podcast now is to have these random conversations and just talk about things. I've rebranded it. I don't know if you've seen, but I've rebranded it. It's the conversations that men won't have except for normally around, a fire. When we're out
Yeah.
hunting, when we're out in the bush, and the podcast is a place for those willing to come on and have those conversations. And then I'm starting a motivated masculine men like brotherhood, where those that don't know quite how to have those conversations
Mm.
can have a safe place of like-minded and again those positive spiraling up conversations. So they don't they can have those so we don't lose as many men, so that men have better relationships, have better health, have better mindsets, all of that, better careers, better purpose on that side. So Dave, you tell us a little bit tell us more about how you got to where you are, and then I do want you to give a plug to your book because I do know I haven't read it, but knowing you, it's going to be excellent, and everybody will get a lot out of it.
So the wrap up the back end of my life where I'm at now. So when I retired, I didn't do it with purpose. We talked about that, and I was kind of in a bad place on July 29th of 2020. So I retired January 1st of 2020. So if you do the math on that, we're getting into the heart of COVID. We're approaching all the civil unrest here in the U.S. and that kind of then spilled over across the world. But then on July 29th of 2020, good buddy Danny took his own life. He was a detective sergeant in Trenton, New Jersey. That negatively impacted me like nothing else ever in my life. And I was 100% positive that I was in just as bad of a place as he was. And if it wasn't him, it probably would have been me. And I took that moment as my rock bottom. And I decided, dang, I got to do something to not just fix me, but I got to fix this industry. Because just in New Jersey alone, we had about a dozen police suicides in about a year and a half. 2020, I think we had 19, 2021, we had 24, 26, 2022, I think it was 24, and it has now gone down, but I'll get to that in a second. but the 2019 was the highest nationwide in the U.S. with I think 260 some 263
It's
police
63
suicides
or
across the country.
64 or something like that.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. And it stayed pretty steady in the 190s for the next couple of years. But so I figured I got to do something. So at that time, because of what was going on in New Jersey, New Jersey had started New Jersey Office of Resiliency for Law Enforcement, which I got heavily involved with. And I was one of two retired police officers that was involved with the program. Because what we realized after Danny died was there was no avenue of support for those that were no longer inside the inner circle. And I ended up writing a article that night when Danny died, and it hit immediately, blew up on social media. It went across national media. It turned into this thing. But what only one person realized was they said to another friend of mine, "Hey, did you read deeper into what Dave wrote? He's not okay."
Mm.
And that second person, who was just the newly minted chief resiliency officer for our county, 21 counties in New Jersey, each county had a chief resiliency officer reporting to the state's chief resiliency officer. And this was all brand new. And that person, his name was Michael, he came to me and goes, "Dude, what's up?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He explained to me the observation based on what I had written. He's like, "You have a choice. You can either come with me and we can go do this, 30-day program where you can get some support and it's not going to cost you anything, but you're going to come back a changed person. You'll be okay. Or I'll give you the opportunity to take this course that's coming up in a couple of weeks to be a master resiliency trainer through the retired side of law enforcement, and you can support retirees because this class otherwise is being given to only active duty officers." Well, let me take that course. So before I took that course, he recommended a book called Flourish, which is written by Dr. Seligman, which you'll see that come full circle in a minute. Dr. Seligman is a professor at University of Pennsylvania who developed the positive psychology field. And I read that book and it made so much sense to me. In that book, Dr. Seligman talks about his Master's of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania. And I was like, I'm in. That's my next step. And so I applied once for 2022, which was class 18. I did not get in. But you know what they asked me at the interview? They said, "If you don't get in, what are you going to do after this?" I said, "Try again."
Smart
And
question. Plants that
so
seed.
it me to then try again.
Yeah,
Uh,
plants that seed.
exactly right. So I did, and I got in that second year. I was in 23 to 24. I did my master's at the University of Pennsylvania. By the way, I love this is the one gratuitous thing I'll say all day is that I'm a dumbass cop that made it to an Ivy League graduate program, bro. Holy crap. I
Well,
will ride that
as
to the
you
day I
said, you were
die.
getting 1.8 and 2.8
Exactly right.
GP, and now you're Ivy League and you've got a master's in thesis.
Yeah.
If Dave can do it, sorry, Dave, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way. If Dave can do it,
Yeah.
anybody can do
I
it.
ride that wave as hard as I can, man, because it's really the only thing carrying me right now. But yeah, no, if every time I'm not feeling good about myself, I'm like, you know what? I did that. But what's really cool, actually, a little not gratuitously, but maybe a little bit, is that I'm the only police officer that's ever been through that program in its 20-year history,
Congrats,
which
man.
is really cool.
That's really
Uh,
cool.
it's they Dr. Seligman in 2008 developed the Comprehensive Soldier Fitness Program for the United States Army, which was a study done
Nice.
out of West Point, and it was the start of the resiliency program. They have an evaluation called the GAT. I forget exactly what GAT stands for, but it's a well-being test that they gave to the soldiers, and they were able to predict who was going to get promoted, who was going to be suicidal, who was going to drop out, and who was going to just generally succeed. And it was all based on optimism. And so that was the birth of the newer version of the positive psychology world. And that went into the FBI National Academy's curriculum. And then they were brought into the law enforcement world. So that's kind of the iteration of that. But so that's how I got into that program. It was honestly the best thing that ever happened to me, other than the fact of I like to brag about it. The people I met were awesome. I've learned so much. I continue to learn so much from my classmates and my older siblings that have gone through the program every day. It's such a tight community. It's pretty cool. And that's actually what brought me to Australia most recently was the International Positive Psychology Association's World Congress, which I was able to present at, which was really awesome. I am the only police officer involved in the entire World Association of Positive Psychology.
Dude.
There's an FBI agent, and then
Oh, they
there's
don't
like
count.
two other
They don't
people.
count. They don't count.
They don't
FBI,
have
they
enough.
don't count.
And Eric's awesome. I will give Eric his kudos. He's a good dude. And then there's a couple people from Dubai Police Department that are involved in the association, but they're not cops. They're civilians.
Mm,
So it's and then there's other people that are, DoD related or that are work through some of the alphabet agencies in different capacities, but they're not law enforcement.
yeah,
So
that's awesome,
it's
man.
a really special opportunity to bring law enforcement to that world.
And bring that
Academia.
world back to law enforcement.
Exactly. But going back to the topic of your podcast, academia is not the most masculine place on the planet.
Especially
And
these days, it's getting a really bad
especially
rap.
these days, you can't even say the word masculine without getting in trouble.
Yeah.
What is a woman anyway, right? Yeah, nobody in our Supreme Court can seem to answer that question.
No.
But it's been a really great experience to be able to bring essentially masculinity
Yeah.
to that world because yes, there are military people involved, but they're not doing it from the same place.
Mm.
There's a lot of parallels between the military and law enforcement, but
But they're
there's
not the
also a lot of
same.
differences.
Yeah.
They're not the same.
I remember having Matthew Thomas. He's been on here recently again, but he was on when this was Fight the Burnout. He came on, and then I actually ran a training for my burnout prevention program a while back in Arizona. So he was the deputy chief at Pinal County Sheriff's Office, and he talked about a time when he knows quite a few Navy SEALs and stuff, and he was talking with Navy SEALs, having a beer, and I think smoking a cigar, doing those the full on like having a good time out in the desert. And he was talking with the Navy SEALs and stuff, and one of them turned to him. I remember him telling me the first time we had a conversation. He's like, one of the Navy SEALs turned to him and was like, "I have no idea how you do your job."
So that's how I got to our mutual friend, Sarah Carell,
Yeah,
The Power of Our Story. So in the beginning of this, right after I retired, I started writing my own articles for LinkedIn just to kind of get these thoughts out of my head that I was having and kind of organize my brain. I saw that there was a specific Navy SEAL not too far from where I live. I won't mention his name because I don't know how he would feel about that. I said, "Hey man, I love what you're doing for your military community, especially your team's community. I would love to bring that to law enforcement."
yeah,
We had a phone call and he gets back to me and he's like, "Bro, I don't know what to tell you. I can't help." And mind you, this was like in the heart of like the defund stuff and like all that
yeah,
crap, right? I went, "Man, a fucking military guy. Is he going to go down that path too? Like, are we really completely on our own here?" And his next sentence was, "I just can't relate to what you do."
yeah.
I'm like, "What do you mean? You're a fucking Navy SEAL, bro."
I know. Like
And
all of us look up to them. We're like,
yeah,
like they are the
and he's like,
elite.
"You don't understand, dude." He goes, "We train and train and train and train for the smallest of types of missions. We don't just train till we get it right. We train till we can't get it wrong, and
Hmm.
then we go in and we execute.
Hmm.
And there is very little chance that something will go sideways. And if for some reason it does, we've already prepared for those contingencies. You're a dumbass, goes out at 3 o'clock in the morning, stops cars for whatever that might be doing with unknown people that you have no idea what's in that car. You have no contingency plan. You're fucking alone. What the fuck, bro? Like, no, thank you. That's
Yeah,
coming from a Navy SEAL. And so he was like, "I got somebody you can talk to." And that's how he introduced me to Sarah.
yeah. And then that's how we
Yeah.
connected. And similar, Matt had the similar-ish conversation with the Navy SEAL. He's like, dude, we go overseas. We have prepared till, we can't prepare anymore, as you said. We go over, we do stuff, and he's like, and then we come back. And he's like, but our enemy is over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Your enemy is
He's
next
next
door to
door.
your house.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, I got no idea how you do it. He's like, yeah. And so,
Yeah.
it does it's that perspective of things. I wanted to, now that we've kind of full circled, first off, tell us where you can get the book. Tell us a brief about what you can learn in the book, and then also where people can find it.
So the book is A Resilient Life, A Cop's Journey in Pursuit of Purpose. And it is on Amazon. It is on Barnes and Noble. If you happen to be at the Harvard, Yale, or Penn bookstores, you can also get it there. Uh, and it highlights a lot of the stuff that I talked about in much more detail. It talks about the adversities that I've overcome and the tools that I used along the way, but didn't even realize the tools I was using. And the funny part is about the book is I wrote it before I went to school to get my master's in all of this stuff. And so when I was going through the program, I'm like, well, that's why that happened. Or damn, that's why that worked. Or,
Amazing
oh
when you get
yeah,
those
so
click moments.
yeah, it's like maybe I'm not as dumb and as retarded as I thought I was. But yeah, so And the whole book itself is a positive intervention, right? So the idea of writing and documenting your thoughts in a place where you can organize them, where they live outside of your head and not
Mm.
scrambling up your emotions. And now you can read it as a story. They still exist because they're there on paper, but they're no longer up here making a mess of my thoughts.
Yeah. No, it's
So
so
that's the
true.
book.
Love it.
And the book ends actually with me going off to back to school. So
Awesome, man.
my
So I was
kids
gonna say,
actually
is there gonna be a second book of after you go to school or?
Actually, there will be just starting to put an outline together now, but it's
Oh,
going to
nice.
be in relationship to my courageous optimism theory, I think.
Yeah.
And there'll be a chapter or two about the school experience, what led up to courageous optimism, which we can talk about. Secret. So,
I can't wait to hear completely more about it. But I want to dive into some masculinity side of conversations. And that's the thing when people, and it's funny when I name this, and I name this new group and that I was doing. Motivated masculine men. My wife was like, masculine's a pretty like, it can either, it's very polarized. I was like, exactly.
yeah, that's the whole point.
And she's like, motivated? She's like, really, do you want to use motivated? Because for me, I'm like, motivation is like, and I've always talked about this. Motivation is you get that from action.
Yeah,
Motivation, you're only motivated for a split second. And if you take action, then you actually start to get shit done. Motivation really isn't going to get you, it'll get you off the couch, but it won't keep you off the couch, is what I used to always say. But to the men out there that aren't motivated, that don't have it, having a group of motivated men that are going to keep them going will keep them off the couch. There's a couple things that you kind of talked about, and it's actually it popped into my head. My wife and I have talked about it a little bit, and as soon as you said that your parents divorced when you were 13, I was like, ooh, I want to get Dave's thoughts on this. My wife and I, from what we observe and from our friends and our circle, is that the friends that still have happy married parents that haven't gone through divorce seem to be calmer in their emotions and their life a little bit. Like they're not as roller coaster as those that had divorces in their family or in their parents, especially at a younger age. What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
So I actually think there's two main parts of that strike me up front, and there might be more as we progress the conversation. But there's two things that come to mind immediately. One is what's the tumult, we'll say that caused the divorce in the first place. That exposure to that unrest in your home that led to the divorce. So that's going to be one traumatic exposure you're going to have that it's completely unrelated to you, but it's part of your story. It's part of your ACEs, your adverse childhood experiences, and that's one tick of the checkbox, right? Or one checkbox. The second piece I would say is there's so much research on what is good about a two-parent household and what a fatherless household results in. And I'll say fatherless because that's where most of the research is, and B, that's where most of the divorced homes end up looking like. Not too many kids end up living with their fathers versus their mothers. And I would also say that, maybe in reverse, those that are a motherless household, the kids maybe end up with additional aggression that
The toxic
is because they're
masculinity
only
side.
having one role model. But the kids that are coming from a fatherless household, they don't, especially boys, especially young men, they don't have something to model their behaviors after unless they have a different father figure in their life that's intentional.
Hmm.
Like for me, I had several intentional father figures in my life. My buddy Adam's dad, who I still talk to every day and I see as a father. My buddy David's dad, who, as I got older, was doing my taxes and helped me through that, like administrative parts of life. And then when I was in college, my roommate David, there's a lot of Davids in my life. My roommate David, his parents kind of like just took me under their wing as their fourth child.
Hmm.
And then when I got married, my father-in-law really stepped up and guided me as a young man. And so, but all that was intentional for me. So I don't know that my experience would be the same as,
Of
a
course it
young
won't.
inner city youth that grew up in a fatherless household and didn't have an intentionally secondary father figure
Hmm.
implanted into their life. So I think those are two different roads, but how do we can't prevent one or the other, and we can't influence one or the other to happen. And I think we just have to deal with the circumstances in front of us. But yes, I agree that homes that end up single parent without a secondary second parent that is, somewhat adopted, if you want to use that word, I think you're overly influenced by a single personality, but that missing link is unresolved. And that's what causes that anxiety and that tension, because anxiety is the fear of the unknown.
Glad you
So
brought
if
that
you,
up because I had this conversation with somebody just the other day at work.
and so what you, if you don't know what it looks like to be a man because you've never had that role model in your life, that fear of not knowing what being a man looks like or acts like or responds like, that is a problem.
Yeah.
And how you respond or how you react, I think there's going to be more of a reaction than a response to that is going to be likely negative because that anxiety is going to breed fear. And fear always has generally a negative response to it.
It normally leads into anger because that's how, especially in men, that's how we react.
Yeah.
If we don't know something and we start to get anxious about something, we'll start to use aggression and anger, which then comes out as that toxic masculinity, and then that's why men get this bad rap for different things.
But I think it's related to communication as well. So,
Mm.
when you look at a baby, for instance, they're a prime example because it's a raw sample. When they don't know how to communicate effectively yet, they scream, they cry, they throw tantrums because it's frustrating that they're not able to get their message across to you to satisfy whatever that need is. But it's a natural reaction to the inability to effectively communicate. And I think we have that as adults, especially coming out of divorced families, is we don't necessarily have the language at the age of 13 to express not only our feelings, but our needs. So it comes out as rebellion.
Mm.
And it's not the intentionally trying to hurt yourself or somebody else, but that anger is because you don't know how to effectively communicate what your needs are.
From your experience or from what you've seen, I know my parents got divorced when I was 18. They should have got divorced well long before that. In fact, I watched my parents' wedding video. They probably should have never even got married, but my mom got pregnant with me. Again, love both my parents, and again, it happened and it created who I am
Yeah.
exactly today. But at the same time, you look back and you're like, what the hell were they thinking? They're great friends, but that was about where I should have stopped. I have these conversations. I'm very close with my dad. I'm very close. But again, my dad, I would say he was a friend, but he wasn't really a
Mm.
father figure. And so I would look for those. Now my dad and I are great where we have conversations. We go paragliding while we're driving the hour to go paragliding or to go shooting. We're having deep conversations. He was asking me
That's
about,
awesome.
business stuff. He was like, "Hey Chris, how do you make money off that social media stuff?" I was like, "I don't." So there you go. But on that, the as we talked about before, you become the average of what you're hanging or what you're around all the time. A lot of times, off the back of what we were just talking about, divorced parents normally is not a thing of all of a sudden they're divorced and kids are like, "What's going on here?" And there isn't a father figure in the house, or there isn't a mother figure in the house anymore. It's normally a lead up, and I know as law enforcement, we see it. We would see it all the time in domestics where you'd go and their parents are like, but we keep it away from the kids. No, no, no. You like they
Yeah.
pick this stuff up. And so it's a feed on. And then obviously they'll see, maybe it is that kind of toxic masculinity because the male is trying to overpower because again, he doesn't know how to deal with the father doesn't know how to deal with his emotions. Thoughts on that kind of lead up of to the divorce impacting the way that men then react in the future and how they actually end up then becoming a man or how they portray masculinity?
So I think a lot of that comes through modeling behavior and whether giving or receiving that modeling. And I agree with you that most divorces that take place are probably 10 years too late. And, if they should have ever been married at all. And I question the same thing about my parents. My mom was 18 or 19 when she got married, and my sister was born 9 months later. And my dad was a snake oil salesman from day one. But she fell in love with the his army uniform and his gold Buick Regal.
How do you
So
think that portrays into that eras of masculinity?
toxic for sure because he was this like machismo guy, but he wasn't. That's the thing. It was a
Deep down inside, he
as
had
they would
that
say in the Italian world of Lower Manhattan, it's a fugazi, and it was just not. It wasn't real. It wasn't really who he was. He wasn't this overtly uber masculine guy, but he tried to be. And when you're not authentic, I think it comes out really bad. And that's anything in life.
off the back of that, I'll say masculinity isn't there isn't one. It's a scale, and different people are different.
It's a skill at best because I
At,
think
Yeah.
So much of it is just different.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know
each
that
person will be
it's
different in
yeah,
their masculinity. You know, I was raised quite feminine. My mom was like, be sensitive, you know, loving, care, all that. So my masculinity is not the beat my chest, you know, kind of let's, you know, play football, and that's not me naturally. Me naturally is
right.
cool. I'm gonna sit around, we're gonna have conversations, and we're gonna have deep conversations, and I'm gonna cry in fucking happy movies. I'm gonna cry in fucking sad movies. That's my
Yeah,
masculinity, and as soon as I lean into that and I accept it, it's amazing. Whereas I know other guys, their masculinity is going out playing football and, you know,
right.
smashing into each other. Cool. That's not my masculinity.
No, I'd break
Yeah,
or I'd break
exactly.
something,
Yeah,
tear something.
exactly.
Especially now at 50, like I'm like, I can't do that anymore. You know, I creak just getting out of bed in the morning.
On my
The
back this morning, I was like, oh
I'm
man,
wrecked.
all those bulletproof vest is really starting to take its toll
Years
now.
of just hanging off your back. Yeah, so yeah, masculinity I think is going to look very different in those circumstances. I I think for me, growing up in the way I did, I saw masculinity as a negative thing, not only because of my mom was always like, "You're such a good, sweet Jewish boy." The masculinity I was exposed to was not positive. It was my dad fluffing his feathers like a peacock because he thought his shit didn't stink.
Yeah.
And it wasn't authentic. It wasn't good. It wasn't something that I wanted to model myself after, which is so when my parents got divorced, I saw what real men were about because I attached myself to my friends' dads over time. And it really gave me, I took the best from all of them, or what I saw as the best from all of them. And that's where my masculinity came from.
That's awesome, man. And again, like we talked about early on, is it's that really knowing yourself. Once you start to know yourself, how do you feel? Obviously, you said your son is just gone off to college.
Watch me. You're going to watch my masculinity coming out in about 2 seconds.
I want to hear how you've kind of helped guide, because there's no teaching, is there? Help guide
No.
him and his masculinity, and to be, you know, be a good man, especially going into, and I know a lot of universities out there are pushing, have been pushing that kind of more feminine left side. We're seeing, which I wanted to bring this up. I saw it last night on a little news snippet, but I've been seeing the reels coming up. All those the female fraternities. I don't know if you've seen those videos of them doing the dancing and really
Brutal.
sh well, really
Yeah.
shining their femininity, which is amazing
Yeah.
to see. I remember being at a conference, a Tony Robbins conference. I'm going to put it out there. His Date with Destiny, which really shifted my life. My wife and I were both there, and he does a day on relationship and masculinity and femininity, and he plays the Braveheart freedom section of Braveheart, and he's like, "Man, I want you to get up and yell freedom," and the room just goes crazy. And then he goes, women, how did that feel? And like all of them are like, wow, like because there is that kind of that gruntness of true masculinity that we need, because
Yeah.
we are the protector. We always have
Yeah.
been
It
for
goes back to the
centuries.
beginning of
It
time.
goes back to 2 million years ago. We are the protector. That's why we're stronger. That's why we're faster. That's why we have, you know, we have that strength. But then he gets the women to, he puts on some like really good, like really in a way, not sexual music, but really like flowing music that women can kind of dance to. And you look around, and he gets all the women to kind of dance and move and really shine their femininity. And he picks on a few guys like, "Men, what'd you think of that?" And the whole room freaking explodes. So when I started to see these videos of the fraternity girls like doing these dancing and that, I was like, this is awesome, because they are actually
Yeah.
finally, women are starting to tap into, let's be feminine. And the reason I can talk to this is because my wife has been in a corporate role her entire life. She does event management, but in corporate. And she, up until I went through all my stuff, she's been very masculine. And so me coming home, and then my mom like raising me very feminine, I would fall in that feminine. I am not feminine. I am quite masculine. But then I would come home from, I went into law enforcement where you are quite masculine. You know, you're that protector. You have those masculine traits. And then I come home with butt heads.
Yeah.
And then I was going through all my mental health stuff. And then we started to learn after the fact, especially after that Tony Robbins conference, of how masculine she sits in and how feminine I drop into. So I don't make decisions. I don't take the bull by the horns. I don't, you know, go, cool, this is what we're gonna go do. Not in a toxic way, but in a decisive way. And it would force her to step into that masculinity. So we've done the last, what is that now, 7 years? We've done a lot of working on that masculine and feminine, kind of balancing it out. And she's like, she'll have conversations with me where she's like, this whole women's rights to work and all that. She's like, I think it's destroyed women's femininity. And so when I see these posts by these, you know, fraternities, I'm like, oh, this is great. But again,
That pendulum's
universities,
certainly starting to swing back.
yeah, the pendulum's swinging back. It is swinging back, which it's needed to. But how have you, again, going back to originally what I was asking, how have you helped your son and in turn the younger generation with this masculinity so they don't end up like your dad with that kind of fluffing their feathers, but also don't end up so
With purple
feminine.
hair and nose rings.
You said it. Oh, that feminine side where we're telling all men that they need to have purple hair and nose rings and be not be the protector, not open doors, be that person that actually cares and protects their female partner or their partner in general.
So I think in our house, everybody's going to raise their children differently, and I
Exactly.
100% respect that. So if you don't agree with my version of this, I don't really care, but I respect your ability or interest or desire to do it differently. So I hope, the listeners respect my version of it as well, even if they
This,
choose to
this
agree.
is all our opinion,
So
so
yeah,
don't get your
exactly.
panties in a twist.
Yeah, exactly. Girls or boy panties. The so I pride myself on pretty traditional values. That's how I
Mm,
see the world. And I don't want to say I see it in, so binary, but I do have traditional values. So my children were brought up through that lens, but they were also brought up with the lens to respect other people that are different than them, that
mm,
may not think like them, that may not see the world that we do, but to take pride in who they are authentically and to stand strong on their core values, regardless of how other people may feel about them. Because if you try to be something you're not and you step outside of your core values, of your own internal algorithms, it doesn't work. And you come off as fake, you're going to lose yourself in that. And I just remind my children that they are who they are and they need to be proud of that regardless of what other people think. So my son went off to school with that in his head. He, by the way, as conservative as I am, I look like a raging leftist lunatic compared to his views. So good on him. That's what his values are. And I'm proud of him for standing strong on them. And even throughout high school, when they would have discussions, and our high school was a pretty liberal institution,
yeah.
he held strong and he was able to articulate why he felt the way he did. And he was able to show research based evidence
Yeah.
on why his opinion has standing. Not that it's right or wrong, but has standing.
Yeah.
And so
That's the
setting,
key there of being toxic and not being toxic
yeah.
is
So, and a lot of that honestly comes down to confidence. And so I think when we're talking about masculinity, femininity, or any type of ism, uh, having the confidence to stand on your values, having the confidence to be able to explain your values and back them up, I think is what's really important. Because again, we don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree.
yeah.
Here's why I think the way that I do. And I've instilled that into them. And so they have the confidence to be strong in their beliefs, whatever
Yeah.
those beliefs are. And I don't think my kids have all the same beliefs, to be honest with you. I think all three of them have a little bit of a different, very different perspective on what life looks like and what their core values are. And none of them are bad, but they're just different. So for him, I think modeling respect for other people is very important. I also model a lot of respect for my wife, his mother, because when he starts dating in college, I want him to be doing the same. I don't want him to end up on the 5 o'clock news because he did something stupid or
Hmm.
dropped something in somebody's drink or forced somebody to do something they didn't want to. Consent wasn't really what he thought it was. Like, I don't need that in our lives, and he
No.
doesn't need it in his, because that's a permanent scar.
That's
And not
also very
only,
toxic, that one. Those are
yeah,
so full toxic masculinity, not
yeah. And that's not who he is.
no,
And which is awesome. So I feel
it's
very
awesome to see.
confident that whatever young lady crosses his life will be treated extremely well because of who he is and what his core values. So I'm
Treated with
excited for whoever that
respect.
future person is.
Body language and all that, especially as a cop, you learn all about body language very quickly, as you can identify a lot of them have false confidence. There's a lot of false
Correct.
confidence out there.
And that's where a lot of that feather fluffing comes
Hmm.
from, is because they don't know how to effectively express themselves without that false persona.
Yeah. All right, let's bring in your specialty to this conversation, the positive side of things. How do you think the two correlate together? Positive thinking and
Wow.
positive masculinity.
We have 6 more hours of this podcast to talk.
Hey, we have
Uh,
time. We have time.
so I think One of the things positive psychology says or addresses is that it's important to understand that there is a negative and to address it with a positive lens. So to say that toxic masculinity doesn't exist is not helpful because it does. It's there. But what do we do about it? We can just pretend like it doesn't happen. We can ignore it. I don't think that's helpful. I think it's important to say, hey, this is not what good masculinity looks like. Let's identify that.
Mm.
So where do we go from there? I think positive masculinity comes with a set of, we talked about a little bit, core values. A lot of it has to do with confidence. And I go back to personally my developed theory of courageous optimism. And when I was in school for my graduate program, Dr. Seligman asked me, he goes, what allows a police officer to run into gunfire when everybody else is running away? I was like, I don't know. We're
We're
trained, we're
we're
dumb.
crazy.
Like, I'm
We're
stupid.
shit
He's like,
crazy.
no, what's the actual principle that allows for that to happen? I mentioned some other stupid words, I'm sure. And he's like, no, 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 no. You don't understand what I'm asking. I'm like, clearly, because this isn't going well. He's like, what's the academic theory? I'm like,
Ah.
first of all, there ain't a whole lot of academic theories in police work, or people that even can put those two words together. The
I don't even know the definition of those two words.
Exactly. So I was like, honestly, sir, I don't know. I think there's probably something psychologically similar between the people that are able to do that, but I don't know your answer. He's like, well, I guess you have some work to do before we meet again. I was like, oh, crap, what I step into. But I took on the challenge and I started just plugging words into Chat GPT and trying to develop some similarities between things and looking for common bonds and where things touch each other, kind of like a virtual Venn diagram of different ideas and words. And what I came up with was courageous optimism. Then I took that and I broke it back apart between courage and optimism. And where do those two things come from? So we will get to the answer eventually out here somewhere. But the
I'm loving it because I've had
so
this conversation with so many people and with
I
my wife
broke it down
especially.
into two specific formats. And one was self-determination theory, what we are willing, what we are wanting to do and accomplish. How do we put ourselves out there? And then self-efficacy. What are the skills that we have that allow us to be able to do the things that we're passionate and want to do? And that becomes broken down smaller into the idea of moral will and moral skill. So the want and the ability. And that is where courageous optimism comes from. So courage being the ability to do something, not in spite of fear, but acknowledging it and moving forward anyway. And optimism being the idea that you know what you're doing, your ability to do it, the skills you have are going to positively affect the outcome of this circumstance. So when we're talking about positive masculinity, I think courageous optimism actually really dives deep into what that is. And taking it out of the law enforcement context, as men, we have a strong will to do certain things, but we don't always set ourselves up for success. So, what are you doing to build your skill set where you can become that protector, where you can not just feel like you should, but you actually can? How are you providing for your family? How are you providing for yourself if you don't have a family? What are you doing to positively affect the people around you that is not necessarily nurturing, but is action based? And I think that's where positive masculinity comes in. It's that ability to not be an indulgent protector because you can't do it, but a protector in terms of service because
Mm.
I'm supposed to, or I should, because you deserve it. Not because you can't do it yourself, but you deserve that love and that compassion by somebody else that has the will and the skill set to be able to provide that for you. To me, that's kind of what positive masculinity looks like.
No, I love that. I love that, man. And I would full-heartedly agree with you because it is that masculinity side of things. It's not that we have to do it, but it's that we can
Yeah.
and that
And
we're
have the skill set.
and have the skill set. And
Yeah.
it's not a false thing that we can. It's a, like you said, it's a skill set. And you see that we'll bring it back into law enforcement because you and I know it so well. You see it in the early days of law enforcement versus the veterans. The veterans will stand back and they'll be like, and it almost looks blasé, but they're like a duck on water. They are going a million miles an hour underneath the water, but they're sitting there like, yeah, I've been here. I use it at work all of this saying at work all the time. I'm like, it's perspective. And even
Yep.
when I'm doing trainings or talking with people, and again, it comes into that masculinity thing. It's perspective of learned knowledge. I've been in my career as law enforcement. You're saying you as well. Everything we did, somebody could die
Mhm.
at a drastic side of it. Paperwork, you screw up paperwork, somebody could die because they could get released from jail because you don't get a conviction, and they could go off and kill somebody. Domestic situation, they go home and they kill their missus, whatever. Normal civilian life, you don't have really. There's not a whole lot that it hits that side, so you can't really think. You can't really. But again, that leads back into that masculinity side of thing. Is if you have trained yourself to be a good man, to be able to protect, you go to the gym, you're strong. You don't need to use that strength in the day to day, but you're strong and you know you're capable. You'll be a hell of a lot more confident. And when things come at you, when if you've done emotional training, when your wife is that time of the month or whatever, all the women listening, they're just gonna rip me apart
They
right
just
after
cringed.
that comment. They just all of a sudden disconnected. But it is, you do have those emotional swings. Women have it.
Yeah.
It is science based that women have it. And so when they come at you, you can stand there and you can be like, this isn't about me. Or
Yeah.
maybe it is, and you need to work on that. But you're actually able to self-reflect on that because you've done learning and you've done training. Then you're not going to be that person that explodes back at them. You're going to be like, oh, okay, cool. Well, what do you mean about that, babe? Like what? Like how can I learn from that? And that's yeah, I think that's kind of, in my layman terms and my uneducated terms, that's kind of where I think of it as is, we gotta stay learning, stay growing, and we'll be better men for it.
I agree. I think leadership is also a big part of positive masculinity. I think that men, and I'm going to get in trouble for this one, men have been kind of pushed out of what it means to be a leader.
I'm
I
glad you brought
think
this up.
And I think that when we have done such a, in my opinion, really crappy job, forget of what the intent was, but the actual implementation of trying to elevate people that weren't necessarily in leadership or executive or high society roles, we
Mm,
tried to manufacture something that wasn't naturally occurring at the speed that we wanted it to. And I think that kind of upset the apple cart. I know I'm going to get beat up for this, but it's not that I don't think women should be in leadership positions. And I don't think minorities should be in leadership positions. I think it should be a merit-based system,
agreed.
in any system. The cream rises to the top. And if you're the cream, awesome. I don't care what your genitalia look like. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care where you're from. It's irrelevant to me.
Yeah, I don't care what your
And I think
pronouns are, as long as you
I'm about
prove
it.
that you can do it. It's totally true.
Absolutely.
Everybody should be given the equal opportunity, but we
Correct.
shouldn't be giving more.
And that's the difference
Yeah,
between equity and equality. And I think we've lost our way over the last 10 years in that conversation, where we tried to falsely manufacture what things should look like versus where people actually should be in any given moment. I mean, we'll just use generic terms. Crap, that's not going to come out well. You can't push people into a role. And I'll use an example, actually. There was a law enforcement agency in New Jersey. This is earlier on in my career. The young woman lived in town, did not work for the agency I worked for. She worked for a different agency, but lived in the town that I worked in. And we became friendly. She happened to be gay, a lesbian police officer. And the agency that she was in was really excited to have their first lesbian officer that was promotable. And it was at the time, it was, the early 2000s where it was really a thing. So they pushed her.
you're telling me it's not a thing still?
Well, it might be, but certainly was then. They pushed her through the ranks well before she was capable of taking on the next rank,
Yeah,
just because they wanted her at a very high position as soon as possible to say that they had this representation.
to make themselves look
And
good.
yeah, but what they didn't think of was the officer. And she ended up quitting. She ended up leaving law enforcement because she was promoted beyond her capabilities at every turn. Not that she couldn't have gotten there eventually, because she was very smart, she was very talented at her job, but she went too fast.
Yeah, and then
And
you don't have the
because
skill, you don't have the skills and the
that's
knowledge
exactly
to
right.
be able to
So
actually
she did
hold that
not have
position.
that self-efficacy piece to make the self-determination successful. And she didn't
You're
have the
setting her up
skill
for
sets.
failure. It's
It's
like trying to
exactly
it's
what they
it's
did.
like trying to throw a cop into a gunfight without a gun.
Yeah.
or any
And she
kind of
ended up
firearms
suing that
training.
agency and won a ton of money.
And this here is that's where that I mean that's toxic masculinity actually, to be perfectly honest, in my opinion,
100%.
because you're
100%.
trying to
Make
push things,
something out
make
of someone
something
that
out,
they're not there yet.
no, and it's not there yet, you know.
Yeah.
um,
She would have been amazing.
yeah, oh
She
yeah,
honestly,
like
she was a
you
fantastic leader, and
yeah,
they destroyed it.
yeah, which is really sad because it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something that we want. And you see it time and time again, not just in law enforcement, but you see it in all sorts of areas of things. Question, I want to jump to purpose. You know, you talked about your purpose and that. What do you think about correlation between men truly actually having positive masculinity, that really, caring, taking care of people. Going back again, I think back to masculinity of, it's back to, where we started, that kind of hunter-gatherer ages of things. Where do you think purpose falls into this whole thing? Because you know me, I love the purpose conversation.
Yeah. So I think as men we serve a purpose, whether it be biological, whether it be, going back to the hunter and gatherer age, we were the hunter and gatherers, and we weren't the people at home raising the children because much to the chagrin of certain people today, men can't birth children.
Hey, Arnold proved that
It's
wrong. Arnold Schwarzenegger proved that wrong in the 90s, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a good movie. It was a good movie. But, biologically, that's just not, I don't care what dress you put on or how long you grow your biology doesn't allow for that. So, our purpose early on was to be the provider, not the provider of children, but the provider for children and the provider for family. And
And that looks different. I'm going to clarify that right now. It does
yeah,
not necessarily just mean you're financially making more. Yes, women,
correct.
cool. My wife makes a shit ton more than I do. And
And
for
if it wasn't for
years,
my wife, I'd be eating ramen noodles.
I did eat ramen noodles when I was, but my wife has
Yeah,
consistently supported me, and
100%. I'm
financially
the same
wise
boat.
as it. Financially, we're not
Yeah,
talking financial. We're talking about being that grounded place for
yeah,
family, being present. And present doesn't necessarily just mean physical. It means emotionally, mentally.
100%.
But being there is, yeah, it's being that provider of that safe place, you know. There's a reason that
Yeah.
women feel really safe when, with the right man when they cuddle up next to him, because they
Mhm.
know that we can protect them
I
for them.
think that there's some biology to that. There's some emotionality to that as well. If you don't present the aura of being a protector, then I don't know if that relationship works because
They don't feel
how do
safe.
you correct? And I think that's a natural, innate need of women. And not again, this doesn't go back to the women can't protect. I'm not saying anything
I know some
negative in that
women that
way.
can absolutely whoop most men's.
I've been on that side of it. I've wrestled with the toughest of them, and I've gotten my ass kicked by plenty of women. And I'm not too over masculine to be able to admit that.
I'll fully
Uh,
admit there's a lot of women out there that, I mean,
but
but again, but
there's
protector
an
doesn't mean,
emotional need there,
yeah, protector doesn't
and
mean
that's
physically
biological.
always.
Yeah, and men being historically the provider and the caretaker, and again, not just financial, but for a bunch of different pieces, security, emotion, all that, we do play a role, and there is a purpose. And I think we've worked really hard to work purpose out of gender role or even societal roles for whatever, and we've tried to then manufacture purpose in the same way, and it's just not natural. It's and I don't like the word normal because I don't think normal's fair, but there's some irregularities to when you try to manufacture something that isn't consistent with its normal algorithm.
We talked
So
about that
it's
earlier
yeah,
around the confidence side of things. When you're manufacturing confidence, most people can see it, whether it be conscious or subconscious. They can feel it or see it. They know that you're not being true and authentic. And yet when you're authentic, that's why you draw people. I mean, you and I, that's why we're drawn to each other, and straight away. We're
yeah.
both very authentic people. I'm gonna call a spade, and you as well. And you're gonna tell me I'm a dumbass if I'm talking shit, and I'm gonna do the same thing back.
And
So,
honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way.
no,
I want to be called out when I'm wrong or when I'm sideways or, help keep me focused.
yeah.
And if you're not doing me any good, and then I don't want to be around you.
I got
So,
asked the other day how I am with taking feedback, and the fact that like all calls are recorded and all this, and I was like, not from a big brother standpoint, but from a learning standpoint. I was like, hey, I'm gonna be the first one to put my hand up and say, yes, I feel very uncomfortable, and half the time I don't like it in the very beginning when somebody tells me that I've done something wrong or that I need to grow here or there, but then I quickly get over that and go, cool, this is how I get better. because it is uncomfortable and we don't
100%.
like it. But that is, I think, truly being a true man, is a true person, really, is going, cool, I'm not perfect, and that's
Right.
good.
Well, it was the same thing in law enforcement with when the body cameras became a thing. The people that immediately, whoa, I'm doing this, I'm quitting today because of these stupid things. Big brother. No, it is a tool that's going to make you better, and it can be the best training tool we've ever had. I don't care why what the intent was. The intent was to screw cops. We have to reframe that because it's a tool that we can actually use to our benefit.
To be perfectly honest, it's
And
better at screwing the criminal than it is screwing
I
the
know,
cop. You get to
100%,
go, Your
because we
Honor,
are
here
our
is the
intent is
actual
good.
live video. Here's the actual
Right.
live video of how he was
Yeah.
acting, not how he's saying he was acting.
And I think a year or two into those things, they were the same organizations that were pushing for them, like, yeah, what body cameras? They were trying to get rid of them because they said they were, whatever. But yeah, but I think those types of tools is what makes you a better man, a better person when you're able to correct your mistakes. And I often talk about mistakes of the heart and mistakes of the mind. So a mistake of the mind is fixable, right? You screwed something up, you can learn from it and you move on. A mistake of the heart is intentional. It's core to who you are. You fucked that person because you wanted to. And that's a very different conversation. And that's nothing a body camera or, recorded phone calls can ever fix.
No.
So
That's
yeah,
a value. That's a values thing.
correct.
That's
And if your
a
values suck and you're intentionally making mistakes of the heart because you're not a good person, that's not masculine.
No, that's not. And I will say this right now because we do see it, and again, our backgrounds, we know it. You do see it in law enforcement where you're like, wait a second, that person 5 years ago was not that way, and they're making these
Right.
decisions consciously. You can change, just like values.
You can.
Values can be changed. You can change your values, and they will grow and evolve over years. And you can keep the same values if you want to. But again, it's that we talked about in the very beginning. It's those choices that you make, it's the
Yeah.
decisions that you make, and it's who you hang around with will evolve and change those things.
And that goes back to that neuroplasticity conversation. Your brain will adapt to what its new normal is, and it will create a framework for you from what it's being exposed to. So if you're exposing it to things that are crap, you're going to give crap, garbage in, garbage out. It was the old computer saying, right? And but if you want to change it and you go through that process and the hard work where your mistakes of the heart are now going to evolve into being heartfelt and you're going to do better, you can change, but it takes time, it takes work. And your brain will then adapt to that new normal and it will become authentic for you. But you have to want it.
Yeah, that's the first step. You have to want it. It's just like anything. Dave, a few more questions because I know, I mean, we've been going, you and I could talk. I mean, this is
We
like
do
our
this
third,
forever, buddy.
well, this is like our
Forever.
third time having these conversations, and every time we do, I mean, when we do finally get together in person, we just better like block out like a whole weekend and just be like, cool, we're just gonna chat.
Yeah, there isn't enough beer in a keg for us to sit around.
No, there isn't. There's not enough beer in New Jersey for us to be able to do
Mm,
that. And then more beer we get, the more we'll talk. And yeah, who knows where that
yeah,
conversation is going to go. We should probably record it or maybe not record it. But I
that's
got
all.
a few more questions that I kind of, again, for today, I want to learn. And then I know we're going to end up having another, a fourth and fifth and sixth conversations, on here. Because we just have such good ones. And we both, again, coming from that positive, masculine, just human side of things, we want to help people be better, as you said in the beginning. What advice would you give to young men who are struggling in this day and age with finding that purpose so that they can be the best man that they can be?
That's a great question. I think, and I like doing this exercise when I teach my classes, is to build a purpose statement for yourself. The research shows a 10-word purpose statement is, let me rephrase that. A 10-word purpose statement is how the research was done. Whether yours is 8 or 15, I don't think it really matters in the end. But building yourself a purpose statement, which in a corporate world or law enforcement world, it may come out as a mission statement when you're talking about an organization, but a purpose statement is a mission statement for you. And what does that look like? And if you can, the reason they did the 10-word limit, and it's not plus or minus, it's 10 words, because it causes you to think and articulate and phrase things in a way that packages it in a finite space. So you got to become creative and think deeper. And you can't just put 18 sentences as your purpose statement.
The
So,
amount of times that you see that.
yeah.
That means
So,
you haven't gotten clear, by the way.
exactly. That's exactly right. So you have to be succinct in what yours is. And unfortunately, I can't remember exactly what my 10 words are at the moment. I'm drawing a blank, but essentially it's acting in service to others, which is
Hmm.
my purpose. But you can then take that purpose statement and turn it into a meaning story. So a meaning story is generally 500 words. And from that meaning story, if so interested, you can then build, a book off of that in the end if you really choose to. But what that purpose statement and meaning story does is it gives you grounding, it gives you a North Star on how you're always going to look at a situation. So if you can, whenever you need to make a decision, how is that decision in service to your purpose or meaning statement? And if you have to go broader, you can use your meaning story. But the meaning story is generally picking out a moment in time or an experience in time where your values may have come from. So it's a little broader and it's not as dialed in for sure. But that purpose statement is so important, that mission that you have. What is your North Star? What are you always working towards? And how does your decisions align with those values? So that's what I would work with somebody on as they're moving up in age into the world. And I talk to my kids about that.
That's awesome. Yeah, very similar to what I do for people. My mission statement is I create less pain for myself and others so we can create the best version of ourselves.
Yeah.
I make sure that it's directed at me first,
Yeah.
and then directed out to the world. Because if, again, we know this, if your bucket's not full, then you can't fill anybody
Can't fill
else's
anybody
bucket.
else's. Yeah, I think it was Tony Robbins that said you can't pour from an empty vessel. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. One last question that I want to ask before I do our final question that I always do now on the podcast, which you'll love. How do you believe that we can get more men having these kinds of conversations?
Wow, great question.
Or what advice would you give to men out there so that
I would
they feel comfortable
say
having conversations like this?
leading by example is really important. Modeling the behavior, the change that you want to see in the world is really important because if not you, then who? And if you're not willing to run through that door yourself, no one else is going to trust you to do it on your behalf. So and I'll bring this back to law enforcement. If I'm leading a team, if I'm not willing to bust down that door because I'm scared of what might be the boogeyman that's on the other side, how dare I ask my team of people to do it? And so I think it comes down to the same thing here is, by the way, there's no boogeyman on the other side of this conversation. I think the only thing on the other side of this conversation is good. So leading by example, there's really no risk. And if people don't appreciate having this conversation, those aren't the people you want to be having it with anyway. Now, they're the ones that need it the most, but they may not be your starting target. But I think leading by example, being honest, being authentic, being naturally you is so important because that's what people are going to follow. Again, using the water cooler example, it's contagious. So if you're around the water cooler and talk about something, we'll call it positive masculinity, and you're having that conversation, someone else is going to chime in because that's the conversation. And that will build, that will grow. But be the example, be the change you want to see in the world and lead by example. That's probably where I would start that conversation.
I love that. And again, I'm gonna put a plug for kind of, the group that I'm kind of slowly building. If you need a safe place where you know that, you need that water cooler as such, where you know that it's gonna be positive, uplifting and a safe place, just reach out to us, send us a message wherever you're watching this. You can go to you can email me at brotherhood@motivatedmasculinemen.com and we'll have a conversation. If you want it to be one-on-one, we can do that. If you want to know more about Dave, we'll put links down below so you can contact him. You can get the copy of his book, and then you can always email me, and I can put you in touch with Dave directly as well if you're having a challenge with that one. Dave, before I ask you the final wrap-up question, the closing question, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time. I know that the time difference is massive at the moment between you and I, just like we're a long ways away from each other. So I want to say thanks for finding the opportunity and for what you're doing as well for not just law enforcement but for men out there, for people out there, and keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you, man. If you don't hear it enough, I want to say it again. I'm proud of you and all that you've done, and I'm very glad that you're still here with us after all that you've gone through. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing. Do you have any final words before I ask you this final deep question?
Yeah, at risk of doing the gratitude dance, I am thankful to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. And, whether we're doing it on the phone with just each other or whether we're doing it in this format so other people can hear it, I always appreciate our time together. And always learn so much from you. And I just really appreciate the way you think. And our conversations always make me a better person. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you for all that you do to bring this stuff to light and to opening up the floor to having the conversation.
Appreciate that, Dave. It's again all about creating that less pain for people. So I'm grateful for that. All right, last question I have for you. If you could hand every man on the planet a single insight that would unlock his potential to lead, love, and live with purpose, what would you tell him? And I can repeat that if you need me to.
Yeah, I think I got the answer, but go one more time.
If you could hand every man on the planet a single insight that would unlock his potential to lead, love, and live with purpose, what would you tell him?
So I'll use my tagline that's on my email, which is lead by example, stay resilient, and earn your badge every day. The earn your badge every day is obviously directed towards my general audience or my world of law enforcement, but I think we can all earn whatever badge we wear, whether you're a marketer, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a doctor, nurse, or whatever you are,
Just a
that's your
father,
badge.
even just a
Yeah.
husband. Yeah, that's your
Yeah.
badge, you know?
And I think it's really important that we don't take any of the things that we do for granted and we earn that responsibility to be that person.
I appreciate that,
That's what I
Dave.
would,
I appreciate that. That's awesome. Good last insights. Again, thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you everybody
thank
for
you.
listening and watching. Make sure, as I said in the very beginning, share this out to just one person, and you'd be surprised how many lives you can change just by saying, "Hey, you should have a listen to this." It also obviously helps with the algorithms and all those different fancy things that Meta and Facebook and Spotify and YouTube and all those guys love to use. But most importantly, I just want to get it out there. And so that, one, as you heard my mission statement, it creates a little bit less pain for somebody because they've heard a different conversation. Maybe they've learned just one thing. So again, thanks for today. And
Thanks,
we
buddy.
will,
Appreciate it. It's always fun to spend time together.
it is always good. And I can't wait till we do it in person one day.
Heck yeah.